Hey guys, welcome back to MarkDillon.xxx. So first of all, thank you for visiting. Alright, so tonight we have three pretty simple questions. The first one is from Ryan. He wants to know, do I have a preference when it comes to cut or uncut? Um, Ryan, actually for a long time I was strictly only into cut. And over the last probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I've started to play around with guys who are uncut, and I enjoy both pretty much equally, I would say. Maybe in terms of just the actual look of the dick itself, I still probably prefer cut a little bit. Also, in terms of giving oral, I would say I have a slight preference for cut. Although I will say, when it comes to bottoming, I think uncut does feel quite a bit better. So it's a trade-off there. Um, but I don't think I have any one preference that is really jumps out at me. So I would say I like them both about equal. Uh, the next question: who chooses the positions in a scene? Um, I would say for the most part the performers. Generally, when you get into the industry, you identify yourself as strictly a top, bottom, or versatile, and directors will make their casting choices based on that. If you have a versatile guy, uh, certain movies the director may say, I'd like you to bottom, or I'd like you to top in this, or flip. But in general, it's based on the performer's preference. If you notice sometimes when there are guys who are strict tops, after a while, after scene of topping, a lot of people are very interested to watch them bottom. You saw that with particularly with Patty O'Brien recently. So I would say in that particular instance, the studio does make a pretty good push to try to get a strict top to do a bottoming scene. And that's usually a much bigger deal than if a strict bottom were to do a scene topping. So that's one of the few times where I think that the studios really try to pressure someone into going outside of the role that they prefer. Is if you have a strict top who's topped after scene after scene, and all of a sudden the audience is just really excited to see him bottom and get fucked for the first time, then they'll make a pretty good effort to try to convince that performer to bottom at least once. But normally it's just based on the preference of the performers. All right, the next question is from Patrick. Hey, Mark, what do you think the porn industry will be like in 10 years? Where do you see it heading? Patrick, I don't know that I'm particularly qualified to answer that, but I will give you my opinion. Um, so I think kind of some of the things that are going to shape the industry over the next 10 years are uh, ways to make it more profitable. Just about every studio that I know is complaining about the how the profitability of porn is been pretty consistently decreasing. There's so much free content out there, piracy, all that kind of stuff. And in addition to the fact that there's a ton of free amateur content that's not pirated, but in many cases it's even better, and it turns the viewers on even more. So I think let's see. Some of the ways that I think they may combat piracy will be um, maybe focusing more on live sex shows, um, where people will pay a premium price to watch it in real time, which is a big turn on for a lot of people. Um, and then you can edit that footage and archive it and add that to your membership area and charge a discounted price for that. But I think that, and the reason I say that is because studios that have a very strong webcamming program seem to be doing better than the studios that don't, in general. So I think some of the studios will try to go that route. I think you'll also start to see more studios using amateur content. For example, imagine a scenario where a studio says, they put out an ad on social media or Manhunt or Grindr, any of that, and says, look, submit us your homemade sex tape, and we'll take the top say top 10 videos we receive, and we'll pay the submitter for that particular video. And that way you get all these videos to choose from. You have no production cost. When you actually find one that you really like and you think will be a great seller, you buy it from the person who submitted it. And that way you get that real amateur feel that's almost impossible for a studio to recreate, and you're not fronting the cost of producing it. You only will pay for it once you find a video that's really, really great. So I think you'll start to see that, probably more amateur content, more very well produced live sex shows, because those people are willing to pay a pretty significant premium for those. I think some of the studios still have to really improve the platform with which they have to host those, because if you watch some of them, they're not that great. They can cut in and out. There's still a lot of work to be done there. But yeah, I think the biggest things that are going to shape the industry, unless there's a huge change in how porn is delivered, like some kind of change in, I don't know, like maybe holographic something, or some way that would really revolutionize how it's actually delivered and watched. But absent that, I think the biggest things that are going to drive change in the industry are ways to make it more profitable and reduce the costs and combat piracy. I mean, if you think about it, just maybe in terms of yourself or your friends, certainly in my case, I know I have friends who they just say, oh, I don't pay for porn. It was so stupid to pay for porn. Why would you do that? There's tons of free porn out there. And I always make the point that, if you really like the stuff and you enjoy watching it, and you want new content to be produced, keep in mind that at some point the law of diminishing return is going to come into play. You can't have profitability going this way and cost of producing going this way. At some point, those lines are going to intersect, and something has to give. Pretty much every studio I talk to is seeing the effects of the piracy, and there's really not an easy way to combat it. You can litigate against the pirates, but that's an expensive, consuming process to go through, because there's thousands and thousands of pirate sites out there, and they spring up every day, and many are not even based in the United States. So that's combating the actual piracy itself is very difficult. So I think probably you'll see they'll look for ways that really, really result in the consumer wanting to either pay a significantly higher price, like the webcamming shows, which are extremely expensive to watch, or something like the just amateur content that can be offered at a very, very reasonable price, and people will say it's worth paying reasonable price to watch this really hot amateur content, rather that's all kind of localized on one website, rather than scouring the internet for it. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing that's shaping the industry right now, is figuring out a way to make it profitable again. Because there have been several studios that have really struggled. Some big name studios have gone bankrupt. Others have merged together with the large straight parent parent companies and things like that for additional funding. But just in general, piracy, I think, is going to be one of the biggest things that shape the industry over the next 5 to 10 years, and how to combat that, and figuring out ways to really motivate people to want to pay for something when there's so much free content out there. I do think that there's probably not an answer to that problem at the moment, because it's a question that I very often answer when I'm in the presence of anybody who's making those kind of decisions with a studio. Because I'm fascinated by business of all kinds, so I always am very inquisitive when I meet somebody whoever's running their particular business, and I ask a lot of questions, and I've yet to get an answer that I think is sufficiently satisfactory for how they'll combat this. You get a lot of people have ideas floating around and things like that, but I've yet to hear something that really would give me the confidence to say this is where I think it's going in the next 5 to 10 years. I can only hypothesize about what I think makes sense. You know, and if also just think about the change that's happened over the previous 5 to 10 years. I mean, how many people do you know that are still buying porn DVDs? Pretty much everything is being watched online. I think probably if you look at the mobile platforms, more studios will start to look at how to create a really enjoyable viewing of porn on your phone, on your whatever mobile device you have. So that's probably something that'll come into play too. I think that it's actually probably a good idea for studios, the few that are focusing on their DVDs, to stop allocating those resources into producing DVDs, which are declining in sales year after year, and to start to invest in the infrastructure that it would take to create a viable mobile platform to improve their delivery for the live sex shows that people are actually willing to pay a premium price for. So that's just my 2 cents, and I'm probably overcharging anyway. All right, so that's it for the questions tonight. Before I forget, I have one visitor to the site who emails me all the time to remind me during my next blog post to please do it in blue jeans and stand up and show everyone. So before I forget, there we go. And I actually need to remember to do the same thing in gym shorts for somebody else. All right, guys, thanks again for visiting markdillon.xxx. I really appreciate your support. Thanks. Good night.